Hey everyone, this is Pastor Mike. I'm going to welcome you to our Sunday morning, January 25th service here at Living Word Ministries, Assemblies of God in Burkesville, Kentucky. If you haven't figured out already, most of you already know, but you can take a look outside and see there's tons of snow and ice on the ground today. And so our service is completely online. It's just a virtual service today. And normally when we have an in-person service, that service goes for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours long. That's not how long this service is going to be because it's online. There's about 6 minutes of worship that you'll get here in a few minutes, and then Pastor Dana will share a message. But before we get into that, I want to share a couple of announcements with you guys. Next week, we'll be announcing who the candidates for the board are, and so many of the members have nominated some individuals to be nominees for board candidacy here at the end of next month, and so we will announce who those individuals are. And then if you are a member, we highly encourage you to be present at our business meeting, our annual business meeting at the end of February 22nd, where we will vote on 2 board members, and so that will come from that candidate pool that we'll announce next week. And so the nominations are closed on that. Today would have been the last day, but obviously there's no way to do anything with that unless you were submitting it. But nonetheless, also I want to encourage you and remind you that if school in Cumberland County is ever closed on a Wednesday for snow or ice or something weather related, we automatically cancel Wednesday night service. So keep that in mind, not just for this week in case there's still stuff going on, but keep it in mind for the rest of the next couple of months if there is more ice and snow. Anytime Cumberland County closes on a Wednesday for weather related reasons, we also will cancel youth and Bible study, adult Bible study that night. And so just keep your ears peeled for that. Make sure you know and are aware. For the youth ministry, I typically try and do a live stream when we don't have service. So if you're a young person watching this, make sure to check that out. That's just a couple of announcements I have for you. But I also want to let you know that when we have worship here in a couple minutes, the 2 songs we're going to be singing are From the Inside Out and Holy Forever. And so maybe you're watching this on your TV and maybe on a tablet, a phone. If you have another device, you could actually pull up the lyrics to sing along with me as I lead you in worship. I'll leave that up to you entirely. Maybe you know the lyrics to those songs. But nonetheless, again, thank you for joining us today. Times I'm failed, still your mercy remains. And should I stumble again, still I'm caught in your grace. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all faith. Purpose remains, the art of losing myself in bringing you praise. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all faith. Lord, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and praise become my embrace. To love you from the inside out. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all faith. And the cry of my heart is to bring you praise from the inside out. Lord, my soul cries out. Sing this with me. 1,000 times I've failed, still your mercy remains. And should I stumble again, still I'm caught in your grace. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all faith. in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us, and all who will believe, will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all, and the angels cry, Christ, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And if you've been forgiven, and if you've been redeemed, sing the song forever to live. And if you walk in freedom, and if you bear his name, sing the song forever to live. Yeah, we'll sing the song forever and amen, and the angels crying, Christ, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy to the King of Kings. Holy, you will always be. Holy, holy forever. You will always be. Holy, holy forever.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to appreciate my son for taking care of the worship and announcements. Do remember this next coming Sunday, we will be announcing the board member candidates. A couple years ago, when we were doing this, we recorded this, and somebody said, I think you just basically recorded that the day before or whatever." So I'm going to show you this in real time, that it's Sunday, January 25th at 10:18. So I'm live, you're live, we're all live. Hopefully we stay alive. If you noticed in the video that my son did with the worship, you saw the lights kind of flicker. We've had some of that going on. That's also the reason we had some issues getting the live stream started. Hey, this morning I'm going to be in the book of Acts chapter 27. I've been preaching through the book of John, but the message that I had ready for this morning ties into another practical aspect of that message. One that's very, very important that all of our folks are able to be here, to hear, to listen to, and to understand. So that will be, I'm going to push that back to next week and do what I usually don't do, but I feel that this message applies today as well because of the weather. I don't usually preach a message twice. My folks that have been here for 15 years know that. And this message I recently preached, not here, but to another group of people. And I'm going to make it apply to where we are today. We have had, like I said, snow, slush, ice. There's about 4 inches of slush in the church parking lot right now. And I'm going to come back over after church with a shovel and try to start shoveling stuff off. Just one of those days with the weather, right? Okay, Acts chapter 27, verses 1 through 8. We're going to be going through most of the chapter. I'm not going to preach a long time, but I want to make some points. Just simply calling this along for the ride. And when it was decided that we should sail for Italy, they proceeded to deliver Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of the Augustan cohort named Julius. And embarking on an Andromedan ship, which was about to sail to the regions along the coast of Asia, we put out to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica. And the next day we put out at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul with consideration and followed him to go to his friends and receive care. And from there we put out to sea and sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. So they were sailing close to ground, close to land, so they would have some cover of the land. And when we had sailed through the sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. And there the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy, and he put us aboard it. Most likely, this ship was headed to Egypt, and it had on it, ultimately, a lot of wheat, a lot of flour, a lot of things like that. And when we had sailed daily, slowly for a good many days, and with difficulty had arrived off Cnidus, since the wind did not permit us to go further, we sailed under the shelter of Crete off Salmone. And with difficulty, sailing past it, we came to a certain place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. So they are having all sorts of issues, all sorts of problems with the wind, not with the ship, not with the sailors, but with the wind. Something's going on in the atmosphere, and it was going to cause a lot of trouble, just like the snow coming in Friday evening around here, around the nation. Looking at Facebook yesterday and today was a hodgepodge of road closings, school closings, church closings. There was a montage of slide offs of cars everywhere, even among those that know how to drive on the stuff, because the wind was bad, the snow was heavy, you got ice and freezing rain and sleet and all other sorts of things on top of that. And so they're at this place now where they realize the sailing's been difficult. And when sailing is difficult, it takes you a little bit longer to get there. When I was a kid, up until I was about fifth grade, my mom would never let me ride my bike anywhere by myself. And probably she was just being a good mom. But there were times that my dad would take me to Little League baseball games. There was a school award thing for fourth and fifth graders, and my dad got me there late for that. My dad would also be taking me somewhere, and because he had a drinking problem, would be drinking way too much, and would think, "Oh, I need to stop there." So he'd stop there instead of 5 or 6 minutes for like 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. And I remember being late for ball games, for award ceremonies. I remember just being late everywhere. And as a fifth grade kid, I was like, "Mom, I've got to ride my bike. If school's not, school's out, I need to ride my bike." And so my mom finally let me start riding my bike. Matter of fact, I got to a game one night, 10 minutes late, and the coach wouldn't play me that night. And I begged and begged, I said, "Look, my dad's a drunk and this and that. He got me here late. Can you please let me play?" And they wouldn't let me play. So the next day when we had practice, I got on my bike and I rode after when it's springtime, early summer. I got there and I'm like, "Look, coach," and I talked to him. I said, "My dad always gets me here late, and I'm begging you." That was why I was late. I was an all-star player and I was a good player. And finally, the assistant coach, he said, "Okay, tell you what, Dana, I will start coming and picking you up. I drive by your house to come to the plate to the ball field and stuff." So he started picking me up. I never missed a game. I was never late for a game. Never missed a tournament game. On all those trips and things, I got to go. But because my dad had his own kind of agenda and went about 35 miles an hour everywhere he went, we were always late. And if you've ever been around me, you know I'm always early. That's probably why. So all these sailors they're struggling because the wind's contrary, they can't get where they're going. But look what it says in verses 9 and 10. And when considerable time had passed, and remember, Paul wants to get to Italy, Paul wants to get to Rome because he's supposed to meet with the leaders there. The voyage was now dangerous, since even the fast was already over. Paul began to admonish them, and he said, "Men, I perceive that the voyage will certainly be attended with damage and great loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives." So Paul speaks up and he goes, "Okay, guys, here's the deal. I says, Paul's a man of prayer, that I guarantee the men on the ship had heard him pray, probably pray and rebuke the winds. They probably heard him pray for safety and for the captain, the chair, the caretakers of the ship to take care of them, each of them. But he says, "Look, God's told me that this ship is in danger. The winds are bad. There's probably gonna lose the ship. Probably gonna lose lives. Probably gonna lose the heart. We got to do something. We just need to stay. We need to stay here." But the centurion was more persuaded by the pilot and the captain of the ship than by what was being said by Paul. Right there is the biggest mistake. Sometimes people will say to us things and we think, we don't want to hear that. We need to listen a lot more carefully than we ever really do. And that's not just for husbands and wives and husbands and kids and grandparents and things like that. This is about hearing what the Holy Spirit says. Now, most of these people, Paul's under the charge of a centurion who's most likely not a spiritual or doesn't have any spiritual life at all. He probably follows all the gods of Rome. If you remember Mars Hill in that situation, to the unknown God, they put idols up to the unknown God. But Paul warns him. He says, hey, we got to be careful. But the centurion was more persuaded by the pilot. The centurion, who wasn't a boat guy, he never steered a ship. All he cares about is, I got to get Paul before there. I've been commissioned by the leaders to get him there. And because the harbor was not suitable for wintering, the majority reached the decision to put out to sea from there if somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete facing southwest and northwest, and spend the winter there. So they say, you know what? This harbor is not set up for a ship of this size and this many people to harbor here all winter. We need to go further. So all of a sudden, they stop listening to Paul, and circumstances become a whole lot more important than what really needs to be dealt with and addressed. And when a moderate south wind, verse 13, came up, supposing they had gained their purpose, they weighed anchor, they began sailing along Crete, close inshore. So basically, the wind starts, they're like, hey, the gods are with us. Paul warned them, don't go, gonna lose the ship, gonna lose lives, gonna lose stuff, don't go. So, but the wind's there, they're like, hey, we can make it, we can get to Phoenix, whatever. But before very long, there rushed down from the land a violent wind called a Euraquelo, a nor'easter had come. So now Paul's warning is starting to come to the forefront. And when the ship was caught in it and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and let ourselves be driven along. The wind got so bad that they couldn't steer. They just took their hands off the wheel and said, okay, wherever the wind blows us, we will go. And sometimes in life, you and I are along for the ride. I was along for the ride with my dad when he would drive 35 miles an hour and stop wherever he needed to stop, because that was the way he did things. He didn't really care about me getting to games on time. He didn't really care about me being into school stuff on time. And it bothered me, but I was along for the ride. I was a fifth grader. I couldn't drive anywhere. I couldn't get myself there. And finally, my mom said, "Yes, you can ride your bike." He was along. So these guys on the boat, they're just along for the ride. They should have listened to Paul. And running under the shelter of a small island called Clauda, we were scarcely able to get the ship's boat under control. So once again, the wind keeps going, stuff keeps happening, and sometimes in life, everything seems more and more out of your control. Our service this morning was out of our control. Why? Because weather came in. We've had the power was out at the parsonage for about 3 to 5 minutes this morning. There's power outages all over the county, power outages all over the state in different places and all over the nation. But all of that weather has impacted church services today. And so a lot of people stayed home. A lot of people are probably still in their pajamas watching stuff and fixing breakfast and who knows what else you're doing. But we're along for the ride. We're along for the ride because the wind, the rain, the snow, the sleet, and everything else that came. And after they'd hoisted it up, they used supporting cables in undergirding the ship, and fearing they might run aground on the shallows of Syrtis, they let down the sea anchor, and so let themselves be driven along. So they pulled up the anchor, and now they're going, and suddenly this nor'easter comes, and now they're letting the anchor drag. They have no idea where they're going to go. In other words, if you were on this ship at this point, you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, we're in trouble. Somebody's going to die. We don't know what's happening." And I want you to remember that Paul spoke and he said, "Men, I'm telling you." So he spoke to everybody. He said, "Guys, we need to get our act together. We need to make sure that we do not go on this boat. We need to stay here. We need to winter here. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If we go out there, we're going to be in a lot of trouble." And now they're undergirding the ship. They're trying to hold the thing together. The next day, we were being violently storm tossed. they began to jettison the cargo. So now all the stuff the ship was hired for to take, they're throwing it off. Well, that's an insurance claim waiting to happen. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. Whatever wasn't tied down or necessary was going. Stuff was being thrown over. And since neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small storm was assailing us, from then on, all hope of our being saved was gradually abandoned. There's an old saying, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. These guys had no hope. They had no, everybody's thinking we're going to die. I guarantee even the sailors, they're watching stuff go overboard. They're watching the ship's tackle, the furniture, the hardware. They're throwing everything over. And now they've not seen the sun. They've not seen the stars. This thing is a huge, huge storm. And they have no idea where they're going. They're just floating along. And if you're a sailor, you know you're in trouble. And when they'd gone a long time without food, you see, they'd also probably been throwing some food or storing that food, holding it back, thinking, we got to keep it just in case we stay alive. Paul stood up in their midst and he said, men, you ought to have followed my advice and not to have set sail from Crete and incurred this damage and loss. Have you ever wanted to tell somebody, told you so? You ever wanted just to kind of get beside somebody and smile almost in a smirky way and said to yourself, didn't I tell you this was going to happen? That sometimes is a very, very just feeling and maybe a well-earned feeling. But Paul steps up and he says, guys, I told you, you should have listened. But you know what? Nobody did. Nobody listened. And Paul and everybody else at this point are simply along for the ride. A couple of years ago, around the end of March, I got very, very ill. And those in my church you guys will understand and know the story. I became very, very ill, respiratory condition. I was having trouble breathing, coughing, hacking, and I knew I was coming down with pneumonia. Went to a local ER. I didn't really beg them to treat me for pneumonia. I knew I was going into it, and I did say, I need you to treat me for pneumonia. And, oh, no, you've got flu. So they treated me for flu, and a week later I was back with a collapsed lung because of all things, you've guessed it, drum roll please, pneumonia. I spent 24 hours in that ER, waiting until a room opened up somewhere else. I was sent to another hospital, and after a couple days, they tried to get in there and repair my collapsed lung. Okay? Well, for the first couple of days, things seemed to be going pretty well. I couldn't eat or drink anything. I remember it was on a Tuesday. The surgery was done on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday comes. They said, you can drink some juice or something cold. I said, I want some grape juice. And so they brought me in a little foil top cup thing. I remember taking a drink. And after I took a couple of sips of that, it felt like my chest just exploded. And all that cold grape juice was just flowing everywhere. And I thought, oh my goodness. And even the nurse was like, are you okay? I was like, feels like my chest exploded. And so they brought me some food. They brought me some things like that. And I tried to eat some stuff. I still had trouble, But then later that day, they came in. They said, "Hey, we've done some stuff, and you've got some type of a fungal infection in your esophagus. Don't know where it is, but we called infectious disease people in, and they put me in an isolated room. Jennifer was with me. The isolated room. The people coming in were dressed in like the hazmat suits, like I was toxic or dangerous or something." And I didn't know what was going on. And they kept trying to find out what in the world was happening. And so basically, there was an infectious disease nurse that kept saying, there's just something not right. There's something not right. There's something right. And they were still letting me eat and things like that. But it was the major pain in my right above my heart, my chest area when I was swallowing. And so finally, this nurse told them that they needed her. She wanted them to do an MRI. With the MRI, they found out that somebody in the process of whatever they had done while I was at that hospital had perforated my esophagus and nicked the top of my stomach. And they didn't even know then they nicked the top of my stomach. But that meant 4 days after my esophagus had been punctured they realize they got to send me somewhere else to fix me. And so I'm along for the ride. I have to get into an ambulance. They send me by ambulance to another hospital, which was UK. And at UK, they saved my life after 6 days. And from what I understand in talking to doctors, most people with a hole in their esophagus die after about 2 days. I lasted 6. So I know the hand of God was upon me. But all those things happened. That I didn't ask for that stuff. I didn't think those things would happen. But guess what? I was along for the ride. And what a ride it was. I ended up having to get like a 3 month sabbatical. Couldn't walk, couldn't sleep flat for a month. It took a lot out of me. And these things happen. And so Paul finds himself in a situation where he gets up and he says, I told you guys you should have listened to me, but you didn't. And now he says, and yet now I urge you to keep up your courage, for there shall be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. Now, anybody who's heard Paul should have already said, you know what, that guy was right. But now he says, nobody's going to die, but we're going to lose the ship. Now, if you're the sailor, if you're the captain, if you're the guy that contracted and was paid to ship all the stuff that was on that ship, that a lot of it's been already jettisoned off the ship, you're probably thinking, okay, not just loss of payload, not just money to pay my sailors, and there'd probably been about 200, a little over 200 men on that ship. But now Paul says, nobody's going to die, but we're going to lose the ship. And he said, for this night, an angel of God, to whom I belong and whom I have served, stood before me, saying, do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar, and behold, God's granted you all those who are sailing with you. Notice it says, do not be afraid, Paul. The angel spoke to Paul. So I'm telling you, I believe Paul was a man of God. Paul was a man of faith. But when you're on a ship that's being dragged by the wind, and then with the anchor down, it's still being dragged all over the place, Paul's in a bad place. Every person on that ship is in a bad place. And even though Paul's been told nobody's going to die, an angel of the Lord had to show up and say, Paul, don't be afraid. So that tells me that Paul was probably praying on his knees aggressively and loud. He also says in verse 5, therefore, keep up your courage, men, for I believe God that it will turn out exactly as I have been told. So now the guy that said, told you so, because he told them what was coming, and they didn't listen, hopefully now they're going to listen to him. He goes on to say that some other things happened. I don't want to focus everything. I don't want to read all of this there. But they start getting closer on the 14th night. They start looking at things. In verse 31, it says, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, unless these men remain in the ship, you yourselves cannot be saved. So Paul says, I want all these people to stay on here. He told prisoners. Paul was a Roman prisoner. So as they're getting closer to land, he tells them, keep these men on the ship and do not let them kill them. He basically wanted them to understand, you men need to stay on the ship. Because if anybody jumps off, we're going to die. So basically, the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it fall away. So the lifeboats were basically cut off. And until the day was about to dawn, Paul was encouraging them to all take some food, saying, today's the 14th day. You have been constantly watching and going without eating, having taken nothing. So for 2 weeks, 2 solid weeks, these people have not eaten. They've probably not been drinking. They probably were hydrating themselves. They were sailors. They knew the importance of water. But they've not eaten for 2 weeks. And they've just been bashed around. And so once again, they're along for the ride. And if they just listen to Paul, look, sometimes you guys and you and I get into situations because of our own doing. Sometimes you're just along the ride because you're on the boat like Paul was. And so he goes on to say, therefore I encourage you to take some food, for this is for your preservation, for not a hair of your head or of any of you will perish. So Paul keeps telling them, nobody's going to die. Now, where's Paul getting that faith? His relationship with the Lord, his constant talk and prayer and time with him. He realizes that God spoke to him, an angel spoke to him and said, Paul, don't be afraid. Nobody's going to die. But just keep people focused on who was going to take him and save him. And having said this, he took bread and gave thanks in the presence of God, and he broke it and began to eat. So Paul basically says, I don't know what you all are going to do, but I'm going to take communion. I'm going to break this bread. I'm going to get some to drink. I'm going to thank God for his protection, his mercy, his grace. And look, when you're along for the ride, sometimes all you can do is just say, okay, God, it doesn't make any sense. I don't like it here, but I'm going to thank you that I'm still alive and still breathing. And I had a lot of those conversations at 1 or 2 in the morning in a hospital in Lexington, Kentucky at UK, when those doctors literally saved my life. I remember looking at all those all those IVs and things that were going to my body. And there was over 30 at one time. And I remember just thinking, Lord, don't know what all those are, but I'm glad they're coming. They're helping me. They're bringing healing. And I was in pain. I was hurting. But you know what? I was alive. And that was God's hand of mercy at work in my life, because at that moment I was along for the ride. And all of us on the ship were 276 persons. I should have realized that as I got closer. 276 people. So almost 300 people are on this ship. Almost 300 people. So almost 300 people spent the last 14 days scared to death, thinking they might die, thinking that they may not get to see their loved ones, their wives, their kids, their families. They may not ever see them again. They may never ever, lift up a tool and do some work. And when they'd eaten enough, they began to lighten the ship by throwing the wheat into the sea. That was the primary cargo of this ship. And when the day came, they could not recognize the land, but they did observe a certain bay with a beach, and they resolved to drive the ship onto it if they could. So they're like, you know what? We've been in the water, in the deep fathoms of the ocean, of the Mediterranean. So we got to figure some things out. So we see some land. We're going to try to get as close to there as we can, and maybe we'll get onto that land. Maybe we'll wash up on the ground. And casting off the anchors, they left them in the sea. Well, at the same time, they were loosening the ropes of the rudders and hoisting the foresail of the wind. They were heading for the beach. So now, look, everybody's getting excited. Everybody's getting encouraged because they see land. After 14, they're like, oh, hey, there's land there. Good, we're going to be saved. And a lot of times when you're along for the ride, you may get a false hope. You may think it's going to be okay. I know people personally who, in the days before they passed away from cancer or major heart issues, many of us know that there seems some point in a person's life that they've been sick for a while. There is suddenly like this resurrection of emotion and feeling, and suddenly that person who's been in a coma or almost comatose for a couple weeks or months is now talking and eating, and there's life there. And I look at that almost as if it's God giving that person a chance to reflect on life, get things right with Him, get things right with family and friends. But people are getting hope, and they're seeing the land. But striking a reef, two seas met. They ran, but striking a reef where two seas met, they ran the vessel aground, and the prow struck fast and remained immovable. But the stern began to be broken up by the force of the waves. So all of a sudden, that false hope is shot to pieces. There's nothing they can do. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, that none of them should swim away and escape. So now I can tell you where Paul's at. Paul's nowhere near the edge of the ship. But all the Roman soldiers are thinking these guys are going to escape, and it's our job to keep these prisoners on here. And if they get in the water, we're going to kill them somehow. We're going to take them out. We can't let them get far away. But the centurion, wanting to bring Paul safely through, kept them from their intention and commanded that those who could swim should jump overboard first and get to land. Now, the only people that the centurion had the ability or the right to order were the prisoners and the other soldiers. So thankfully, the centurion, who didn't listen to Paul in the very beginning, now understands that we need to listen to this guy. And Paul had spoken and said, no one's going to die. No one's going to die. No one's going to die. There was fear, there was worry, there was concern. And the centurion is a man of authority. He is there on orders from his higher ups to make sure Paul gets there. And that's why they put a centurion, a higher ranking Roman official, over Paul to make sure that he got there at all costs. And this man said, you're not going to start killing people now. It doesn't say that the centurion was interviewed by Rome later. Oh yeah, we should have listened to Paul. That wasn't the part of it. But now the centurion's been along for the ride the whole time. And if you just simply listened to Paul at the beginning, well, guess what? They would have wintered in that area. They would never have gotten into the major catastrophe they got into. And that's what happens when you're along for the ride. Some of you are probably feeling like you're in your life right now and you're along for the ride, because you're not where you want to be. Or maybe you're not traveling at the speed you want to travel. You thought this would have happened long ago, or that should have happened by now. And so often there's a statement I've said many times, and it's this: the world rides on the word if. If only I'd done this. If only I'd been here. If only I had this chance. If only I had this amount of money. If only I'd been able to get that house or that loan or that car or that job. If only I'd been able to get into that college. And you feel like you've been along for the ride and someone else is driving. Paul, of all people, was along for the ride. So wherever you are today, whatever you're facing, whatever challenge you're going through, realize that part of it could be because of things you've said or you've done or you've been involved with. And part of it could just be because God's going to take you through some storms. I think we all know that the only way you grow in life, in grace, in ministry, and understanding of the world is when God allows the hard things to happen. And without storms, you'll never be strong. Without storms, trees will not have deeper roots. That taproot is what holds that tree in the ground. And those outer roots that go and they spread from the tree, it keeps them braced. But every young tree needs wind to help brace it and to show it that those roots need to go deeper. So what are you facing today? What are you going through? How many of you are just along for the ride? And don't say, well, I'm not along for the ride right now. Just wait. You might be by next week. I was coming home from college one winter, and the roads were very, very slippery. And I had new tires on the car because I got new tires before I went to college. And there was probably 6 inches of snow. And I was traveling from between Rolla and St. Louis on I-44 in Missouri. And a semi went by me on the left side and was going very, very fast. And up about 5 minutes after he got in front of me, I saw him begin to go back and forth. I saw the back end of that semi trailer, and so I started pumping my brakes softly. There was a lot of cars, and there was only one lane that was really clear. And so I started pumping my brakes just a little bit. And didn't want to hit them real hard because you don't do that in snow or ice. And I realized this guy, he just kept going over. He's in both lanes, and now he's over on the shoulder. And pretty soon that whole thing went and flipped into the right side of the highway on the shoulder. And I had stopped back about maybe eighth of a mile and just kind of watched this. And when you see an accident like that, if you're watching video or if you see it live, it's a scary thing. Other traffic pulled over, some bigger trucks pulled over, and they were helping the guy. And I thought to myself, these truck drivers are probably a lot better drivers than I was. I was 19 or 20 at the time, and driven in Indiana, since I was 16. So I've driven for 3 or 4 years, but at the same time, not experienced like that on an interstate. And I kind of waited a few minutes and kind of got myself together, scraped some more ice off my windshield, and cranked the heat a little bit, and looked at my gas tank, and watched traffic, and finally got back on the road, and remember going past that, and the trailer had come off. The semi cab was still upright, but I just drove by that thinking I got to be safer. And I think it took me, usually it was about an 8-hour trip. It took me almost 14, 16 hours to get home that one time from college. But you know what? I look back and I'm grateful that I decided as a young guy, I was just a punk kid, but I was grateful I decided to go slower. And one of the biggest things that helped me to decide to go slower was what I saw in front of me, because that truck, that was the only vehicle in front of me. And at any given time, I was maybe 50 feet, 100 feet behind it, watching that trailer go, and I'm slowing down. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? In one sense, I was along for the ride. And I learned a lot from the guy in front of me who was along for the ride. And so a lot of times in life, folks, where you are may be because of your own choices. And we all make bad choices. We all make mistakes. We all do dumb things from time to time. But if you feel today like you're in the passenger seat and you may be duct taped into that seat because you're scared to death of who's driving, or you're scared to death because of the circumstances that have put you in that passenger seat. Put your faith in the Lord. The angel said to Paul, "Don't be afraid." So that tells me emphatically that Paul, as a human being, as an apostle, this is the apostle Paul we're talking about. Same guy they stoned at Lystra and walked back into town, you know. Paul was afraid. Paul was just along for the ride. He warned them and they wouldn't listen. And sometimes people have warned you and you wouldn't listen. And sometimes you're just along for the ride because you don't have any idea why you're there, but you are. You may think that about your job. I know people who have gotten pink slips and been fired as businesses downsize. I know people who were laid off and said, "Hey, we'll bring you back probably in a couple months," and that call to come back never happened. I know people who have struggled to pay their bills, to put food on the table. And a lot of times people have said, "God, what in the world's going on?" You put your hands in the air and you're like, "Well, it just doesn't make any sense. I've done all my best." And I also know you can do all the right things and still be along for the ride. Just ask Job. Just ask Paul. Just ask Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Daniel. So, folks, let's pray. We'll pray for the safety. There have been some power outages in our community. Some of our folks at the church have been affected by those. But we're going to pray that God helps us see what he's doing, okay? Holy Spirit, I'm praying that today you would encourage and inspire us, each one of us that's listening right now, to let you lead us and let you guide us. And Lord, sometimes there's things like right now with the snow, we had no control over the weather, the snow. We just had to just kind of turn aside and let it do what it does and did, and go from there. But I'm thankful for those that are watching from home today. I'm thankful for your hand. I keep them safe. Help the weather outage or the power outages to be taken care of. And just remind us, Lord, remind us of who you are and what you do and why you do those things. God, we're not going to have all the answers all the time. But I pray that even when we're along for the ride, that we'll enjoy the view. Even if that view is terrifying to us or leaves a lot of fears and worries and concerns and questions, help us to know we're safe because you're behind it. And Lord, you took care of the ship. You warned Paul to tell them. He did. They didn't listen. Paul said no one's going to die. And yet at the same time, those Romans wanted to start killing prisoners if they tried to escape. And they were only trying to escape to live. So Lord, there are some that are listening right now that are going through. They're in storms. God, they thought they're underneath 10 feet of snow and it's raining on top of that. It's going to be ice and they can't get out. So I pray you give us wisdom and encouragement and understanding to recognize what it is that you're saying, what it is that you're doing, and where it is that you're taking us. So God, even if we're along for the ride, help us to trust you to get us where you need us to be. And so Lord, ultimately, we want you driving. We want you leading. We want you guiding. We want our steps ordered by the Lord. Our direction, our path that glorifies you. So Lord, let your will be done in our lives. Keep us safe in this county. Keep those that attend this church safe. Keep those that attend the churches in our community, our county, our state. God, keep your hand upon us all. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Folks, to just remind you, this next Sunday, we will be announcing the candidates for board members. Our business meeting will be the Sunday, February the 25th. And we'll be electing 2 board members. We'll tell you those names next week. And we'll be having Wednesday night service at 6:30. So God bless, folks. Thanks for watching today. Stay safe, stay warm.